Okay, this week's exercise is going to be to model a table. This should follow along with chapter 4. In your reading, we left off last week at the bottom of page 53 where model a table began. So that's where we're starting, and the textbook kind of goes through one by one, step by step for these. So let's just go ahead and get started. Our step number 1 in the Canvas assignment is to model the tabletop. So we'll activate the rectangle tool. I'm clicking R on my keyboard. And then I'm going to start at the origin. And then we're making it 6 foot by 3 foot. So I'll type 6 foot, comma, 3 foot, enter. And then we'll push-pull this tabletop up 2 inches. So I hit P on my keyboard to bring up that push-pull tool. And select this surface here, start to bring it upward, and type 2, enter. Remember, if we're doing inches, we don't need to specify those units, but if we are doing feet, then we do need to type the units. SketchUp's default units is for inches. And now we're going to make a group out of our tabletop here. So to select everything that is touching each other, you could triple click and that'll select it all, or you might choose to drag your selection window to grab everything, whatever your preference is, and then right click and make group. And then we'll move that tabletop up 32 inches. So I'm hitting M on the keyboard to activate move, and then make sure we're on that blue axis. We're wanting to bring it directly up, and then type 32, enter, to bring it up 32 inches. Step 2 is to draw guidelines, and these will help us figure out where we want our table legs. So orbit around, remember you can press on your scroll wheel to orbit around to the bottom side here. And we will activate the tape measure tool. You can hit T on your keyboard to grab that. And then select any part of this edge here except for the end point. So we can be anywhere inside on this edge here. Click and start to pull it inward. Modify angle here. Start to pull it inward and type 2, enter for 2 inches. And we'll do that for all 4 sides here. So we'll just come around to this side, 2, enter. I'll bring that on all 4 sides so that we now have 4 intersections where we'll be able to start our table legs. All right, so step 3, we're going to get started on one of those table legs with the rectangle tool activated. So click R on your keyboard. Click on one intersection of guidelines. So I'm going to start here at the one that's closest to my origin. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to start at that intersection, and SketchUp is going to snap for you. It's going to bring that red X and the dialog box that says you are indeed at the intersection. So I'll click there to start. And then we're making a rectangle that's 4 inches by 4 inches. So I'll type 4, comma, 4, enter, and that will give me that 4 by 4 rectangle. Or you might choose to, you can just create your rectangle, click to finish, and then immediately type 4 by 4, enter, and that rectangle will automatically adjust back to that 4 by 4. Whatever your preference is. And then you'll see that your rectangle is kind of giving that fuzzy effect. That's just letting you know that there's some overlapping geometry. Not a problem for us in this case, but if you do in the future run into this fuzziness, just know that that means you've got some overlapping geometry. We will create a component here to get started with our table leg. So So we're going to create a component because we know that we're going to be making a couple copies of the table leg. You could choose to make the entire table leg and then select all of that geometry and make the component from there. But sometimes I just find it easier to make the component right off the bat, and then I know that anything that I model within that component editing box is going to be part of the component. So if I double click my surface here, that's going to give me the surface plus all of its bounding lines. And then right click and make component. And we're calling it table leg. And just make sure that replace selection with component is indeed checked here and hit create. And so now I have a component created here. And we're going to copy that component to the opposite side of the table. So for copy, I hit M for move and Control key to activate that copy. And then I'm going to be kind of selective here about where I choose to start that copy point. I know that I want to get it to this intersection over here. If I just kind of grab a random point, then I'm not going to be able to be as accurate with where I'm placing that rectangle. So I'm going to select a point and then start to copy over, and now I can be very precise, snap to that intersection, and know that my rectangle is exactly where I want it. All right, now we're going to double click into one of our components here to start editing that component. You can choose either one. Since they're copies of components, they're exactly the same. And editing one will edit all. So if I double click here on my component, I'm now in that editing box mode. And we're going to make this a block by push-pulling this square down 6 inches. So I'll hit P on my keyboard to bring push-pull tool, select that surface and start to bring it down. And this is going to act similar to that rectangle tool. I can either type 6, enter, and it'll give me that 6-inch depth, or I could just create that block and choose a random finish point, but if I immediately type 6, enter, it'll automatically resize to that 6 inches. Just whatever your preference is. And then to start the lower half of the leg, we are going to offset this block, or this square, by 1 inch, so that a square of 2 inches by 2 inches is left. So I'll grab the offset tool here, hover over the surface that I'm wanting to offset, click and start to bring it inward, and type 1, enter, and that should have offset each of those edges equally by 1 inch. So let's just check with our tape measure here that I've got 2 inches. Yep, all right, 2 inches. Awesome. And then this now created a new surface because I now have these new bounding edges. So we have this surface and we still have this old surface left here. This inner square, the 2 by 2 square, I'm hitting P for push-pull, and we're going to bring that down 26 inches. So whichever way you prefer, if you want to hit 26, enter here, or click to finish in 26 for it to automatically adjust, either way, hit 26, enter. And if we did our math right, those table legs should be sitting on the ground plane. Step 8 is to taper the table leg, so tapering just meaning that it starts a little bit thicker at the top and then slowly starts to thin down. And we're going to do that by using the scale tool. So if I go back into editing one of my components, double click, see that bounding box, that editing box, I'll orbit around down to this bottom square here. This is the one that we want to scale down to create that tapering effect. So I'll select that surface, grab my scale tool, and now I have all of these grips available. I want to scale about the center point, so I want the center of my surface here to remain in the same spot and everything else scale towards it. So in order to do that, I use my modifier key of Control to click that once, and now I have this red central grip here in the middle of my surface. So whenever I grab one of these exterior grips, it'll start to bring all of my edges inward. And we want to scale this by 75%. So I type 0.75, enter. And if we started with a 2" by 2" square, 75% would now give us 1.5 by 1.5 inches. So I'll just grab my tape measure and double check here, 1.5 by 1.5. And if I take a look at that table leg now, you can see that tapering effect. My starting point is still that 2 by 2 square, and then we were able to slowly taper down to that 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch square. And you can see that since we created components, everything over here is automatically created for us because components are linked to each other and editing one edits them all. Step number 9 is to create an apron between these two table legs. So an apron just kind of helps stabilize these two table legs as well as cover any hinges or hardware that's going on below the table. So for that, we're going to make a 1 inch wide by 4 inch tall rectangle at one of these outer corners. So I'll grab the rectangle tool, start in my corner here. I'm no longer in the component editing mode. I'm now back in kind of that main model mode. Start at this corner, and then start to create a rectangle that is 1 by 4. Use your push-pull tool to grab that surface and start to bring it towards this other table leg here. And I'm going to hover on either this surface or maybe this edge, either one, just so that I know that I am modeling accurately. I don't want to be too far into this table leg, and I also don't want to not quite meet it. So if you hover over this edge or this surface, that'll ensure that you're snapping to that point that we want. So we'll now make a second apron along with the legs, copy it and flip it so that what you see here is also on this other side. So we'll triple click on this apron. We want everything in this apron to be selected. So if I triple click, that selects everything that is touching. You'll notice that it did not grab our components and our groups because those are acting kind of as separate entities since they are in components and groups. If my table legs and my tabletop were not in groups, they were also just kind of in that main model space, then triple clicking would grab everything because then everything would be touching. But since I do have those groups and components created, SketchUp recognizes those as kind of separate. So I have my apron, and then I am going to use a modifier key here. You can either do Shift, and that'll allow you to both add and subtract, but if you hit Control, then that allows you to just add. So if I have that, I'm going to select my two table legs here. And then I find it a little bit easier to work with if I were to group all of these. So I'll just go ahead and create a group here by right-clicking and make group. And we need to copy this to the other side here. So M for move, and then Control for copy. And I don't need to be too specific just yet about where I'm leaving it because I still need to flip it. So I'm just going to create a copy over here. And why we need to flip it is we want this apron to now be on the outside so that it looks essentially the same all the way around. We don't want our apron to be on the inside of some table legs and on the outside of others. So we'll grab our flip tool, which looks like this divided house with a blue plane down the middle. So I'll grab that, and we now have these 3 axes that I can choose to flip about. I want to flip about this green one so that my apron is now on the other side. So if I just click that green, now you'll see that the apron did indeed move on the outside. And now I'm ready to move this into place. So I'm going to be a little bit more picky about where I start that from. My goal is to get the outside of the table leg to this intersection. So I'm going to grab the point where that will align to, and then move it into place, snapping to that intersection. And now we just have left an apron for the short end. So we're essentially going to do the same thing with the apron, but it'll just be a little bit shorter this time. So R on my keyboard to activate the rectangle tool, and we're going to make that 1 inch by 4 inch rectangle again. P for push-pull, grab the surface, and start to bring it over to this opposite side. And I'm going to hover along that edge to ensure that I am modeling to exactly where I want it to end. And now we just need to copy this apron over here to the other side. So I'll triple click here on my apron. Again, it's not going to grab anything else because everything else is in either a group or a component. And remove, Control for copy. And again, I want to be specific about the point that I'm choosing. So I'll grab this corner here. And we want that to align with the outside face of these table legs. So now we've got aprons all around. We're almost there. We're on step 12, last step here. We're going to delete all of the guidelines at once. You could individually select these guidelines and delete from there. Or just to be a little bit quicker, if you know you want to delete all of them, come up in your menu bar to the Edit tab and hit Delete Guides. And that'll delete them for you all at once. And then just to be a little bit fancy, we're going to throw down a shadow. For that, come back up to your menu bar. This time go to View. And click on Shadows here. And once you click that, you've got a nice little shadow thrown down. And that's it.